What's up and welcome back to the channel. The name is Ninja Knight. Make sure you like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell up above for future uploads. Thank you. So Dublin GAA have posted its 6 Dublin are 2020 All-Ireland champions. Now this is something I'm very happy about. I'm absolutely delighted to see this team continue to march on and be successful. They are a wonderful outfit, and as the scoreline suggests, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, this wasn't a blowout. This wasn't a handy game. This was a very tight game. This was a very tough game, and I'm going to factor that into one of the videos that I've done last week, and how that also factors into a video that will become very shortly on this game and a particular incident. So they're 6 in a row. So for anybody that's watching from outside of Ireland, that means Dublin have won 6 titles, All-Ireland titles in a row. This is an amazing feat, and it's a feat that doesn't look like it will be challenged possibly ever again, and if it is, credit to whoever decides to try to challenge that one. Now I will be the first man to say I hope it's a magnificent 7. I hope Dublin roll on to get a 7, an 8, a 9th, a 10th, and they continue this dominant period, because we won't forget that Dublin went through a very long barren period, and for all of the talk that comes from the likes of Colin O'Rourke trying to say that the population in Dublin is affecting the game and split Dublin into 4, that's totally a discredit to the likes of the Mayo team that came up today. And unfortunately for them, what happens to them then is they engage in tactics and engage in foul play that brings the game into disrepute. It also causes them to look bad, and it just makes them look a bit sore. And then you see some of the comments that are made in the likes of the gantry from the pundits or analysts or absolute wasters they should be called, because it's egging on the type of behaviour that we've seen in this game. And from years ago when they were talking about the Battle of Omagh, it seems like the GAA wanted to stamp that out, but it seems to be only a problem when Dublin seem to take up action against someone deciding to assault them. So it's very strange stuff. But anyway, I'm going to say, first of all, a commiserations to the Mayo team. They played a hard-fought game, emphasis on fought anyway, and large parts of the game were very much so in control of how they were going to play. They were in control of the likes of the Dublin forwards. I thought the backs for Mayo today were absolutely phenomenal. They, as you can see, they've conceded 2-14, but they kept Dean Rock fairly quiet. Kieran Kilkenny found it tough, and it was only later in the game that Dublin started to break them down and start to move balls on. I also thought the kickouts that they had were absolutely wonderful. I thought the fact that they challenged for everyone in a swarm formation was a good idea. I think that is a credit to the management team, but it's only something you can keep up for so long before you start to run out of steam and people decide, maybe I'll get the ball after, or maybe there's a break on, and that's when the performance levels and the hunger and the drive really drives you on. And something with the Mayo teams that we've noticed over the last couple of years is they start to lose by a point or 2 points and the heads start to go down. There seems to be a lack of belief in the Mayo players. Now, the media will have you believe that the Mayo players should be entitled to a victory, just turn up on the day and are entitled to a victory, but it's always nice to be a speed bump in the road and say, no, we're actually not having that one, because the media seem to hype up the Mayo team, and I do feel sorry for the Mayo fans because they buy into the hype, and they also then have this narrative coming from RTE that they entirely deserve it just for turning up on the day. I'm going to talk about that now in a sec. And in relation to that, what you're seeing from teams now is total demoralisation from the likes of Colin O'Rourke, the cabbage that was up there now talking about Dublin being split into 3s and 4s to make it fair for everyone else. You're giving teams like this then an unfair disadvantage. You're telling them why should they bother, why should they turn up. Well, as you can see from the scoreline there today, 2-14 to 15, that's a 5-point gap. That's not much at all when you look at the game on the whole. It was a very tight game for a large majority of the time. The referee decided to play over at extra time towards the end. We'll talk about him now in a moment. And very much so, Mayo nearly got back into the game, nearly scored a goal, and were very, very dangerous towards the end. So that sort of notion of splitting Dublin into 2s, 3s and 4s, the only reason why the likes of Colin O'Rourke is saying something like that, and interestingly he didn't have the chance to say it tonight, maybe he caught the last video, which would be fantastic. But what you're trying to do then is try to ensure that Dublin won't win anything ever again. You're also causing a serious disservice to guys to the likes of Mayo, and then you're also then engaging them in behaviour of what we've seen at half time, particularly from Aidan O'Shea, tuggish stuff, which I have a video coming out on very soon. And that's unfortunate, because then what you're doing is you're bringing the game into disrepute. And because RTE now want to acknowledge themselves and pretend to be like their Sky or something like that, as Joe Brolly has put it. I mean, Joe Brolly was removed because he was too much of a character rather than the bland personalities that you have. The likes of Joanne Cantwell up there, he was as bland as a Ritz cracker, standing up there asking ridiculous questions. No clue about the men's game whatsoever, and is up there asking ridiculous questions and agreeing with some of the absolute spoof that's coming from some of the individuals that are on the panel. No past Dublin footballer on the panel today, which is unfortunate, because they would give a sense of credibility as to what these guys have put in. But nevertheless, a hard fought battle from Mayo. I thought some of the standout performances today, I think, were the likes of Lee Keegan. Lee Keegan always puts in the shift. He's a really top player. You had the likes of the Cillian O'Connor, really played really, really well again today. I think he was probably their most dangerous player, and towards the end of the game seemed to fade out a little bit, which was fine by me. I was happy to see that. And I think there was a number of other very good performances. I think the performance from the Mayo goalkeeper was really good. His kick-outs were excellent. He was kicking them into nice spaces. And I think overall the tactical system that Mayo had today of playing the ball, and particularly 5 men, say, into a ball that was being kicked up high, and just the numbers won out. It's very hard to do that throughout a whole game, so they decided to fade out. But I think what happens, and a lot of people try to credit, you're getting paid by AIG and all this type of nonsense, and we'll talk about that now too. No, what happens is Dublin employ a style of the game which is similar to Barcelona. They will retain possession for 2s and 3s minutes. And for what will happen is they will pass the ball around, they will kick the ball around, they will tire you out, they will wear you out, and then they will go for the jugular. Then they will make that killer pass when you have fallen asleep. They'll find the dummy, they'll find the dope, and in terms of that, what I mean is they will find a person who's sleeping, and they will see that individual, and they will fire the ball into a position, and you will have then a forward that's going to latch onto that one. That is the idea of that type of possession. You see the likes of Barcelona Football Club did that in the past, particularly when they were at their peak in terms of success. They would hold the ball, pass it around. Other teams are chasing shadows, they're demoralised, and they're not holding on to the ball then, which obviously makes them feel less confident going forward. So that's what Dublin have decided to do, and I think it's a wonderful outfit. I think massive credit has to be given to Pat Gilroy, Jim Gavin, and now Dessie Farrell for this style of play, because it's wonderful to watch, and there's just nothing some other teams can do about it. I mean, Dublin went down to 14 and it didn't look like they were absolutely stressed whatsoever. There were some clever changes made by Dessie Farrell, and I think that made a big impact on the game. He made an immediate change after Robbie McDowd went off, and half time happened, they came back out and they were ready to go, and Mayo just had an extra man and didn't look like they knew what to do with it. So maybe that's a criticism of their manager as opposed to the Dublin manager doing well, but I think they did very, very well. Looking at the teams as a whole, I think 1 to 15, Dublin really showed other teams that it's a collective effort. You will see on the likes of the media stations and in the likes of newspapers, if you still read them, I particularly don't, because they're absolute waffle, and the likes of columnists and stuff like that you will see online, you're off the balls, you're sportsjoe.ie, they have a very big bias against Dublin anyway. People that live and work in Dublin but absolutely hate it. I can't really understand that logic behind that, but there you go. Anyway, they have this insane narrative that they want to keep going at Dublin in terms of the money that's been given to Dublin. It's only recently we've seen Pat Gilroy talk about the fact that they spent wisely, and not only that, then they've decided then to say, look, we'd help other counties out, and their hand was refused by other counties. So there's only much you can do before you just have to say, right, throw the towel in and just play our own game and play it on then as it is. You're seeing the likes of Cork there has a massive amount of clubs. I think it's something like 290 odd clubs. Dublin has 95, around that number anyway, maybe 92 to 95. So this talk about numbers as well too, it's a valid point. But if it was a valid point, then why are Dublin not absolutely steamrolling the hurling? There's the point. There's the counterpoint to that one. The fact of the matter is this is a wonderful Dublin team, and like I just said, 1 to 15, all talented individuals, but they work as a collective. There isn't one individual there that the likes of the media will harken on about. I mean, they'll talk about Aidan O'Shea, they'll talk about Lee Keegan, Cillian O'Connor, maybe 3 members out of 15 they're talking about there. Whereas you go 1 to 15 on that Dublin team and you look at the guys that are there, some fellas might be a little bit more able than others in terms of football and knowledge, skill and thinking, but then you have guys then that will absolutely do anything for the short, and that is an incredibly important factor. You look at some guys there, if they're having a bad game, and some fellas today actually didn't have the greatest of games, and still then there's other members there to pop up and really stand out and help out. And I think that that's an incredibly important thing. When you're looking at the likes of the bench as well too, I mean, that comes down to selecting. You can only have so many individuals that can play, so that comes down to making your selections wisely as well. So credit to Desi Farrell for that when he made some fantastic substitutions. I thought when Mannion came on was fantastic, but I have to say, Brian Howard, take a bow. He was absolutely impeccable when he came on. I have to say, I've always rated him, but today was just another notch up in terms of, wow, this guy is absolutely wonderful. I think Brian Fenton is an absolutely incredible footballer. One of my favourite footballers is probably James McCarthy. I mean, the man is a Rolls Royce. Nothing phases him. Tough guy, great ball player, hard and determined. This is something as well that seems to bother some of the pundits. When you have these tough guys, these hard guys, the likes of your Philly McMahons and stuff like that, every county, every team, I'm going to give an example. Every team has that tough individual that's not particularly liked by anybody else. Look at Roy Keane. Look at the likes of Martin Keown, Tony Adams, guys like that. John Terry's. That's talking about the English game now. But those are fellas there that are tough guys. They're not liked by other clubs. They're not liked by other countries. Why? Because they're tough guys. They're hard to break down. And that's what Dublin have had now over the last number of years. They've had players with resolve, with toughness, with speed, with the never say die attitude. And that is something that is ingrained now in the Dublin team. It's beautiful to see. It's been a long time coming for an Irish team to behave like that, to think that way. And when you see the likes of, say, Conor McGregor and thinking the same way in terms of, hey, I'm going into this world stage and I'm going to win, rather than just turning up and being part of it and going for the laugh, it says an awful lot. And I think Dublin have taken that to the next level. And I think that's where you're seeing an awful lot of that criticism coming from the likes of the media outlets, is that they don't have that same drive, they don't have that determination. Look at some of the biggest detractors that are on Twitter, some absolutely laughable individuals that probably have never stepped across a line on a football pitch ever before, or maybe they play five-a-side once a week and fancy themselves and say, oh yeah, I had a bit of a hamstring injury when I was 18 and I just couldn't quite make county. That's absolute nonsense. You didn't get off the sofa. You don't have that drive. You don't have that determination. And you're seeing the squealing already on Twitter, and it's absolutely beautiful to watch, I have to say. Now, going on to the game itself, the referee, I think today was absolutely terrible. It was probably the worst performance I've ever seen by a referee in my entire life. And I've seen bad performances. I've been involved in performances where a referee is on the pitch and they've been inexplicably bad. But today's one took the cake. I think today what was a factor was no fans in the stadium. I think had he been making even a third of the decisions, maybe even a quarter of the decisions that he was making today, I think more people would have been absolutely going mental in the stands, and that might have had an effect. I think the lack of fans obviously opens it up for nonsense like that we've seen today happen. You had the likes of Aidan O'Shea punching a player in the back of the head going down the tunnel at half time, Mayo squad. You have had a number of individuals there off the ball activities today from Mayo, pulling, dragging. It was horrible to watch. And I mean, one way of saying it is that's defenders can do all these things. But it's funny how Dublin could put a hand on someone and certain individuals will fall over. Big guys like Aidan O'Shea falling over timber, they should call him really from now, fell over there under the likes of Johnny Cooper, who was a good bit smaller, falling over like an absolute prima donna. These would be the same guys that are criticise and laugh at the guys playing in the Premier League that are falling over. It's all laughable in itself, but seeing this diving atmosphere creep into the GAA, it was crept in now a couple of years ago with Tyrone, and Mayo seemed to be all for it today. And funnily enough, they'd be the ones then engaging in the dirty tactics, the punching fellas on the ground, the likes of what Aidan O'Shea was doing late in the game, all that sort of stuff. Nothing was seen by the referee in terms of that. Oddly enough though, if it was a Dublin player to be engaged in stuff like that, you would have linesmen, umpires, referees, everybody would be saying it and there would be dealt with. Robbie McDade was sent off not even sent off, but well, he was sent off for a black card, I suppose, and comes back then 10 minutes later for a joke of a decision. I mean, how are you expecting him to get out of the way of a fella that's running full tilt? If anything, if you wanted to give a free the other way, okay, maybe you could see that. I personally can't. But to decide to give him a black card, the referee was itching to do that. He was itching to get guys off. And that's where I have to say I think the decision by Dessie Farrell to take Johnny Cooper off at the time he did was a very clever one. Now, whether Johnny was injured or not, I suppose is going to be a topic of contention. But I think it was a wise decision given the fact that Johnny does play on the cuff. He does play on the edge. I love him now as a defender. I think he's fantastic. I think he's tough. I think he's dogged. But he does also play on the edge. So I think removing him from that situation, the referee was baying to get rid of somebody, and I think his eyes were definitely set on Cooper, because again, that's another name that's in the media, and they want to vilify a guy like him. They want to vilify a guy like Philly McMahon, for example. They want to vilify the Smalls. This is the type of stuff that we're saying time and time again. They're picking out certain names and deciding to focus on them. So I think if you're going to let a game flow, let a game flow. Don't stop it when Dublin seem to put a hand on someone, they fall over. Yet then when Dublin are swamped and crowded by people, there seems to be no free given whatsoever. So it's questionable stuff. There seems to be no free given for when Kieran Kilkenny was pulled back short, was nearly off his back. I think one of the Mayo players were hungry for success and wanted to pull her off and to put him on himself. But you had the same thing happen to Dean Rock. You had the same thing that was happening to Scully as well too. And after a while, it just looks bad for the team in terms of this is desperation mode that they're in now. And instead of playing the ball and trying to come out and play football, they're engaging in these tactics and then going up the other end and engaging in diving. It was sad to see, to be honest. I have to say, one of the biggest contributions today were Brian Howard, and Brian Howard's second half performance was absolutely incredible. I think it really had to drive Dublin over the last couple of minutes. And like I said, I think Mayo nearly crept in then towards the end because the referee was playing fairly much so over time. But it's another win for Dublin, a very strong performance. Now, as I've said in the previous video, you've had the Cabbage O'Rourke say that Dublin need to be split into 2s, 3s, 4s. When you're looking at that scoreline at 20-15, there's not much in that whatsoever at all. It was a very hard fought game. I think O'Rourke obviously either seen the video that he did last week or actually decided to think rationally to himself and say, well, actually that was actually a tight enough final that these guys don't need to be split into different teams, because the rationality behind it, the logic behind it would be, well, they'd never win anything again. Like I'm saying, there's nobody calling for the likes of Kerry to be split when they were winning all around them. There was nobody calling for Kilkenny to be split when they were winning all around them. Nobody to be calling for Tipperary to be split when they were winning all around them. But the minute Dublin decide to have some sort of dominance, there's some sort of upset. And it's sad to say, it really is. I think the sour grapes really need to go away. I think people need to engage in a fair game. I think the officials need to be fair from here on out. And that's looking at referees, that's looking at linesmen, that's looking at umpires, because some of the decisions that have gone against Dublin over the last couple of years have bordered on the laughable. They have bordered on the disgusting. They have been disgraceful. And some of the performances today, particular from the officials, was very poor. And it is sad to say, when you're looking at a Dublin team going out 1-15, you are playing the 15 of Mayo and you are playing the referee and the rest of the officials. Now, some people won't be happy with hearing that one and think, oh, that's bitter and that's Dublin and stuff. Look, I am obviously going to be biased for Dublin, but I mean, I'm just calling a spade a spade. I've been involved in matches, I've seen matches, and I can be very unbiased, and I am being unbiased in saying I think it was a very poor performance from the officials today. And what I want to see is a better game from the officials. Let things flow. If you were going not to give a free for a player running into crowded people and the ball being overturned, fair enough. But don't engage in giving frees to fellas that are diving. I mean, let's be consistent. That's all I'm asking for. Anyway, another wonderful performance from Dublin. It's 6 in a row now. Hopefully they'll go for a magnificent 7. I hope they go on to 8, 9, 10 and beyond, because the more they win in this, the more I'm happy. I think it's fantastic. But like I said, there will come a time when Dublin will not be winning. They went for a long period where they didn't win anything. So that's not too long ago, and I think people want to forget about that constantly. And I think that's a very big disservice to the likes of the teams that have played Dublin over the years, the likes of your Mayos, the likes of your Kerrys and stuff. And they have come up and they have played really hard fought games. They've games that have went to replays, and that's seemingly what the media want people to forget about. And I think it does a really big disservice to those teams. So if I was those teams, particularly players, managers of those teams, I would be coming out and I would be talking out against what these so-called analysts, these so-called pundits the so-called presenters are saying, I would be saying to them, what are you talking about? It's been a tight fit over the last couple of years. Yes, we've come on the wrong side of results. Yeah, it didn't go our way that day. But when all is said and done, Dublin were just a better team. They had better footballers. They play 1 to 15. They're not looking at one magical individual. It's not the time of Alan Brogan when it was all count on Alan. It's not the time of Mayo or Desi Farrow when it was all count on them. Wheelo, same thing. This is a 1 to 15 group effort, and it is an absolute sight to behold. It's beautiful. Long may it continue. I really enjoyed today. The football on show today, I think by and large, was very, very good. And it's always wonderful when you see a team that come to play football. They come to take risks. Yes, they do engage in the high ball sometimes, and I think today they used that mark effectively. I'm not a big fan of it personally myself, but if the skill level is there and the guy is free, okay, right, I can see the value in that. But for me now, I'm not a big fan of that personally. I think it just stops the flow. I think it doesn't really help defenders. It helps forwards. It could be dangerous in terms of teams possibly having forwards getting injured or whatever like that, because the defender just might decide, well, I'm going to do this, and then someone gets flattened and it's not good. So I would be very wary of that one. I think my man of the match today was James McCarthy. I think he's been player of the season. I'd be very surprised if there was any other player of the season for Dublin, to be honest. I think he's been wonderful. And now Fenton is always in the mix. I think Brian Howard today was absolutely incredible. Dean Rock is always there, Kieran Kilkenny's there, Stephen Cluxton is always there. I mean, Stephen Cluxton today again was just, demeanour was just so cool, calm, collected. Love to see it. And I think when you look through the team, excellent team performance today. And I'm going to leave the video there. That was my review of the match. Obviously, I'm a Dublin supporter, so I'm going to be saying up the Dubs and Bollia, Clea, Abu. And very much so, a commiserations to Mayo. Very hard fought match. They played their socks off. I think that they were excellent today. Maybe next time. Hopefully not next time, though, I will say, as a Dublin supporter. But I have to say, I'm just absolutely delighted. 6 in a row, and long may it continue. Anyway, I'm going to leave the video there. Make sure you like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. I have a video coming very soon on the incident at half time. Make sure you check that one out too, because I have some thoughts on that one. And I am going to leave it there. Talk to you later. Good luck.